Welcome back, crew. It's June, and we are diving into a new tabletop RPG as our game of the month. And for this month, we are picking Kieron Gillen's amazing Die RPG, based off of the comic series of the same name as our game of the month. For those who are unfamiliar with the channel, each month we pick a different tabletop RPG and we spend the whole month diving into it. Starting with our first impressions video, which is this video here, where we're going to go over some of our first impressions after leafing through the book, taking a look at the art, going over some of the core mechanics and different resources associated with it. Just kind of our first impressions as we're getting familiar with the system. After that, we're going to go into PC build, showing you the ins and outs of just constructing a PC utilizing the Die RPG rules. With this one, though, we're going to do a little bit different with the Die RPG rules. It's not too time intensive to build a PC. So we're going to use a little bit of a class overview along with the PC build. So we can show all the really cool classes that come along with this system and some of the fun narrative impacts they can have. After that, we're going to go over the core mechanics of the rules, showing you how to run combat, how to resolve dice rolls, all the big things you need to know to bring this system to the table. And as always, each month we pick we pick a unique aspect of the system. With Die RPG, we're using two impacts, and we go over just something that stands out, either be core mechanics or just some interesting pieces of their lore, and just go over that to just really highlight how the system's unique from some of the others. And with this one, we're doing two. We're going to be going over the ritual system, which is a really unique way to handle adventures, kind of give a framework for adventures without kind of writing them out, making them pre-made, as well as we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the Die comic series world and some of the cool things that it brings to world building. And as always, we're going to do a live actual play. A little bit different on this one, too. We're doing a two-parter this time. So we're going to be holding it June 27th, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as June 29th, that Thursday, same time as well, where we'll be going through and playing one of the rituals they've got in there and kind of showcasing the system. Uh, and as always, we're going to be giving away a free PDF copy of the RPG to one lucky viewer. And since we're doing 2 days with our 2 sessions, I should say, with our playthrough this time, we're going to be giving away the PDF copy of the system the Thursday, the 29th of June. But for our lucky viewer on the 27th, we're going to be giving away a digital copy of Volume 1 of the Die comic series. So you'll be able to see a little bit of the world itself. And if you get lucky twice, you may be able to bring home a copy of the RPG and run some crazy adventures for your own crew in the Die world. So stay tuned for all of that. Definitely in the description, there'll be a link to the first session of our Die RPG. Go through, like it, and click notify so you can come through and hang out with us as we dive into this world. Yeah, let's dive into our first impressions. So this one I'm pretty stoked about. I came across this the Die RPG and comic series, I should say, while looking for kind of the upcoming 2023 tabletop RPGs, and I saw Kieran Gillen's name and I got excited. I'm a huge X-Men fan, and he, along with Fraction and Brewbreaker, wrote my favorite era of X-Men. And seeing him get into some other areas as well, to have a comic series based off or an RPG based off of a comic series he did made it a slam dunk for me to dive in a little bit more. And also, I should point out too, especially I'm a huge Star Wars fan too. I loved his Vader series too, and so with seeing those, it was an easy one to check out. And I recently ordered the copy of the kind of collected comic series, the Omnibus, and fell in love with it. I was just reading through it. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Die comic series, basically it's a meta take on the RPG world. It's with this group of flawed people, heavily flawed people, who got sucked into the world of Die and have to survive that world. And kind of relates to the RPG and the comic series because it's kind of really patterned very similarly to the comic. These group of people, they come in with 6 people. You got the 6 core classes. You've got the master, who is the game master of the section. He's kind of the one that brought them in and kind of caused this all to spark off. He uses, and one of the cool things along with that is each class has its own dice, or own die, I should say. It's unique to them, and they're the only ones that can utilize that die. Because one of the cool things with this series, it has like a little double entendre with the name, because die is the singular for dice, as well as it's pretty lethal comic series and game. So you could either die or you could have your die there too. but each class has its own die. The master wields a d20. There's a class called the Godbinder, which is all about wheeling and dealing with gods, kind of cashing in favors and owing them debt to be able to perform miraculous feats. They utilize the d12. You've got a cyberpunk class called the Neo, where you use fair gold, or almost a little bit of addiction system, to be able to power these kind of high tech science fiction like abilities in this fantasy world. It's kind of a little cool clash. I think that does pretty well with that. They utilize the D10. You got the emotion knights with the utilizing the D8. And they are just this pretty like they each of them have their own core emotion, whether it be joy, anger, grief. And they are fueled by that emotion. And the more they're feeling that emotion, they could go from being able to duel a giant to killing a god, depending on how in that motion they are at the moment. They've rolled the D8, the D6. So the D6, as I said, everyone else has their own die that's completely theirs. Nobody else will use a D20. Nobody else will use a D12. But the die for the fool is a D6. Everybody, for the dice pools in the system, the core mechanics, you can be rolling d6 typically. D6 is also the fool's dice. So rather than having their own, they utilize the most common dice, so that kind of fits into their narrative. The fool is like the swashbuckler class. They have a really like this. Give this to your like crazy bravado character because they're just gonna be ones that kind of run in. The cocky you are, the more you don't think about the odds, the more that you kind of keep this cheery spirit and just kind of running into the fray, the lucky you are. The more that you are introspective or kind of worried or actually looking at the odds, it's kind of the perfect Han Solo class. Just rushing in and kind of just keeping your bravado to keep you safe. So they're the D6 class. And then finally, you've got the D4 class, which is the dictator, and they're a pretty cool class. And some tables may not let them play because one of the things they do is they're able to their voice is able to control people, so they can tell people commands, change their emotions, and that people are compelled to obey. And one of the interesting things with them too is that while people are compelled to obey, it's not like they know what's going on. So they know they're being manipulated by the dictator. They know that they're being forced against their will. And it's one of those ones that really plays up the kind of the monstrosity of taking people's will away from them. It's kind of how much it sets you apart from others, even your own friends. Because one of the core rules with the comic and the RPG, is when you're pulled into this world, you have to decide: are you staying or leaving as a group? Because one of the big things there too, and the way they structure the adventures is usually the world will end if you don't make one or the other decision. But everybody has to agree, and you have to be living to have a vote. So this is one of those ones you have to make sure you have a cool table with it, because it could be PvP is very likely in this system. It definitely because the game master be running the master typically as the antagonist, but even interim in the group with kind of the other classes interacting is a heavy chance for PvP because if you die, you don't get a vote, and if people wanted to leave or people wanted to stay, they can sometimes kill to get that vote the way they want it to. But as I said, these are heavily flawed people and part of the game. It seems it's kind of exploring those flaws and having the world reflect them. Because one of the cool things too with this system is how the world is built. It's built on a D20. So there's 20 different regions on the world, kind of a layered in that polyhedral style, and they're all kind of a different influence. So like in the comic series, they had a section that was like a warfare that was based off of Tolkien's time during World War One, and had some of his influences to J.R.R. Tolkien. It had some of his influences that later became The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings in there as well. There was a section with Lovecraftian horrors, with Lovecraft being the master of that world. There was a section too with H.G. Wells, like all of these cool inspirations, which I assume are inspirations of Kieron Gillen's, made up this world. And one of the things I think most game masters will fall in love after reading the comic series, especially reading the RPG, is you can pattern your world off of your own inspirations and your players' inspirations. I've already started jotting down my notes and bringing in some of my favorite inspirations: X-Men, Star Wars, Greek mythology, all of those into the world, and have some fun pieces of the players to interact with. And once we go through some of the core pieces of the world building or player generation or persona generation, I'd say for this system, we'll be bringing in some of the players ones too. So that was a lot of information, just a little bit about the system. But as I said, I'm pretty stoked for this one. A little bit more on some other things for the first impressions I think are just really interesting for this system. As I love the ritual setup. We're gonna have a whole video dedicated to this, but I'm not a big one for pre-made adventures. I hate reading as I'm running. I'd rather just kind of go off the top of my head and my own notes. But this one has probably my favorite way for a system to be able to kind of give you a framework, give you a way to pre-generate something while still making it feel like it's your own and have your own ideas shine through. So the rituals are amazing. I hope more RPGs do it. I haven't run it yet, so hopefully I'll like it when I run it. But just reading through it, I get excited each time I check it out. So we're gonna go more into that, but check out the rituals if you get a chance. It's just a cool way to both generate personas, which would be kind of the player's PCs, and then build them into an adventure and kind of figure out what's important to them as you go through and have a 2 to 6 shot adventure, is the way they call it. Fortunately, due to time, we'll just be doing a 2 shot for ours, but we are going to be recording a separate section too, where we go through the ritual process and build our personas and all of that too. So we'll be recording that, so I'll throw that up probably ahead of time before we get into the two live actual plays. So that was another cool thing I really liked going through some of my first impressions there. The other big thing too, the art is amazing. I'm just gonna give a shout out to Stephanie Hans as well. So she was the artist both in the comic as well as for the core rulebook itself. I love the art, kind of a really a trippy, it's not trippy style, but it's a really cool sheen to it. So check it out. I love like how the different ways that it's kind of distraught, illustrating the characters and some of the events they go through. So really give that a look too. But yeah, I've been very happy with the art for both series. But yeah, so that's a quick look there. But one of the big things I'll say is reading through this. So there's definitely combat mechanics and kind of core mechanics. It's overall it's still more close to a rules light situation. But this is what I definitely encourage you to have a good group of players for. I've got some of my favorite RPers on this one because it's really sort of a good exploration of characters. Because in this comic series and the way they've set the RPG up, with these heavily flawed people, you'll be diving into their psyche. With this game, you can it pulls in echoes, which are either kind of echoes from different fantasy properties or fictional properties that they relate to them, or echoes of people they know in real life that kind of either torment them, help them, whatever it may be. And it's just kind of a great way to kind of encourage some fun RP, as well as like kind of resolve some or kind of dive deeper into the character flaws of whatever character they wind up making during ritual generation. So I think it's something that's been a little bit unique for me on that side, and I'm just excited to see how it plays out. So definitely pretty stoked from what I've seen so far on this one. Yeah, so that was just kind of a quick run through of the first impressions. Uh, Overall, there's a lot to dive into with this one. And especially, I highly recommend if you haven't, go check out the comic series as well. If you're a if you're a game master, if you play a lot of tabletop RPGs, you'll most likely like this, and you'll probably be like sprung with ideas of your own for worlds you can build utilizing this system to have your players traipse through, and just have some fun dynamics with it too. But yeah, for anybody that's checked out the RPG, drop in the comments for something that you like about it or something you like about the comic as well. For this one, I'm just pretty stoked for it. I want to see what the community thinks. But definitely like, subscribe, go to our live actual play. I'll put a link to it in the description. Click that notify me. You're going to have some fun with my crew on this one as we dive into it. As well as join us for your chance to win a free PDF copy of the system or volume 1 of the comic series. Yeah, thanks for guys hanging out, guys, and until next time.